This is what they meant when they said, don't talk to strangers. In the early 1900s, a 10-year-old boy was playing in the woods when a tall man appeared and asked if he wanted to come back to his cabin for dinner. Totally caught off guard, the boy reluctantly agrees and begins walking. When they get to the cabin, the boy is relieved when he sees Paul, a family friend, sitting on the porch, so the boy happily goes inside. After they eat, the boy says thank you to the strange tall man, says bye to Paul, and then he leaves. He had only walked a few steps when he sees his family, along with Paul, running up the path towards him, frantically asking if he was okay. Confused, the boy says, I'm just fine, and he looks at Paul and he's like, why didn't you tell them I was with you at the cabin? And he points over his shoulder. Paul glances over the boy's shoulder and then narrows his eyes and says, you were kidnapped by a cult 3 days ago. No one's seen you. Terrified, the boy turns around to look at the cabin he just came from, and it's gone. All he sees is a dark forest that stretches for miles.
This is why you should always get new shoes. There was a kid named Tyler who had a pair of shoes that he loved. He had them for 4 years and refused to get a new pair of shoes, even after his parents offered to buy them. Tyler wore the shoes everywhere he went, and he never had a problem with them. One day, Tyler went to the mall with his friends when suddenly he felt a sharp pain in both of his feet. He tried to ignore it, but it just kept getting worse. Tyler then fell to the floor and he couldn't walk. His friends then called an ambulance. Tyler was then rushed to the hospital. When the doctor came in to talk to Tyler, he said, I have some really bad news. Your shoes are so old and dirty that spiders laid eggs in both of your shoes and bit you over 30 times in each foot. Tyler couldn't believe it. The doctor then said, we are going to need to cut off both of your feet so the infection does not spread to your whole body. Tyler froze in horror. He knew he had no choice. After the surgery was finished, Tyler wished he listened to his parents and got new shoes.
This is why you always say yes to tandoori chicken. In 2012, a high school tutor and her student stayed up so late one night studying that by the time they were done, the buses had stopped running. Without another way home, the student asked if he could stay the night at her place. Reluctantly, she agreed. When they got back to the apartment, she fell asleep on her bed and he fell asleep on a blanket next to her bed on the ground. A few hours later, she wakes up to the boy standing awkwardly in the middle of the room with a very strange look on his face. She asks him, what's wrong? He looks at her and says, I'm really hungry. Let's go get some tandoori chicken. Confused, she says, it's 2 a.m. Just get a snack in the cupboard. And he grabs her by the arm and he says, no, we are getting tandoori chicken right now. And he yanks her from the bed. Feeling totally caught off guard by this whole situation, she goes into the hall with the boy, and as soon as the door shuts behind them, she can tell that he is terrified. He looks at her and just says, I'm not actually hungry. When I woke up, there was someone under your bed.
This is why you should never eat Pop Rocks. There was a kid named Jimmy who loved the candy Pop Rocks. He ate them every single day and he loved all the flavors. One day, Jimmy ate a bunch of packs of Pop Rocks and drank a lot of soda. He then told his parents that his stomach hurt, and they said it's because you ate too much candy today. Jimmy then went to his room and the pain got even worse. He then laid down in his bed and tried to sleep the pain away. About 30 minutes later, his parents heard a loud bang coming from his room. They then rushed upstairs and opened the door, and what they saw made them both scream. There was blood all over the room, and Jimmy's body parts were spread out everywhere. They had no idea what happened. They then called doctors and professionals to come over and investigate the scene, and they came to a disturbing conclusion. Because of all the Pop Rocks that Jimmy ate, and mixed with the soda that he drank, it created a reaction in his stomach and caused his body to explode.
This is why you should never stay in sketchy motels. In 2005, a young woman on a solo road trip across the country decided to stop for the night. The first place she sees is the Mountaintop Motel. It looked pretty cheap, but she was tired, so she said good enough. The check-in guy eyed her up and down very uncomfortably and then asked her if she was traveling alone. She ignores the question, pays for her room, and then walks away with the key. When she gets inside her room and sees there are literally cockroaches in her bed, she says nope and decides to sleep in her car in the parking lot. Around 3 a.m., she wakes up to see the check-in guy using his own keys to get into the motel room she was supposed to be in. A few minutes later, he storms out and slams the door and starts walking towards her car. Terrified, she hides under her blanket as the man tries to open her car doors but can't and walks away. She speeds off and calls her friend and asks her to look up the address of Mountaintop Motel so she can give it to police. Her friend's quiet for a second and then just says, "The Mountaintop Motel closed a week ago."
This is why you should never go swimming in a lake again. If you ever go swimming in a lake, you can get a very severe brain infection called an agleria, and it's caused by amoebas that are found in lakes and rivers. The amoeba will then start slowly eating your brain, which you would most likely die from. This is extremely rare to get, but every time you go into a lake, you actually risk getting it. So I, for one, am never going in a lake again, and I think you guys should do the same.
This is why you should always trust your gut. In the early 1970s, a college student decided to hitchhike his way home after class. A car pulls up, a man offers him a ride, and he climbs in. As soon as the car started moving, the student felt totally uneasy, like something was wrong but he couldn't quite place it. Without saying anything, he waited till the next time they slowed down and he flung the door open and ran away. 2 years later, he's flicking through TV channels when he comes across this special interview with a death row inmate, and it's just the audio recording, so he hears the interviewer ask the inmate, "Why did you remove all the door handles inside of your car?" The man just goes, "Well, the first time I tried to kill someone, I picked up a college hitchhiker who got smart at some point and jumped out of my car. So, lesson learned, remove all the door handles." When they showed his picture, the student knew immediately that he was supposed to be the first victim of John Wayne Gacy, aka the killer clown, who had killed over 30 men and boys in his clown room and stuffed them into his basement.
This is why you should never go into your basement alone at night. One night, a girl named Kayla was in her living room watching TV. She then went to her kitchen to get a snack. She then walked by her basement door and saw that a light was on down there. She then walked down the stairs thinking nothing of it. When Kayla got down there, she turned off the light and started walking back up the stairs. Then suddenly she heard a noise. She thought she was hearing things, but as she stood there and listened, she heard the noise again. It sounded like somebody whispering. Kayla then freaked out and started running up the stairs, when suddenly somebody grabbed her ankle and tried pulling her back down the stairs. Kayla then kicked the person in the head and got out of the grip. She then shut the door and locked it and then called the police. When the police arrived, they searched the basement and found nothing except for a note that said, "You got lucky, I'll be back."
This is why you should always keep your head on a swivel. In 2017, an elderly woman who lived alone thought she saw something moving in her backyard and went to the window to have a look. As she's looking around, a shadowy figure emerges right on the other side of the glass, standing in her backyard. Terrified, she keeps an eye on the figure while calling police, but by the time she hangs up, the figure's gone. When the police arrive, her front door is unlocked, so they go inside and they find her still sitting in front of the window looking for this figure. The police search the backyard, but they don't find anything. When the police go back inside to search the house, they quickly find some large footprints that couldn't have been hers in the room that she was sitting in and all around the first floor. That's when they realized what was going on. She wasn't seeing a shadowy figure in her backyard. She was seeing the reflection of someone in the room with her.
This is why you should never crack your own neck. There were two friends named Jeff and Ryan, and one day they were hanging out playing catch with a football. Jeff then asked Ryan if he was hungry, and Ryan said yeah. So they walked to a nearby diner to get something to eat. When they got there, it was very crowded, and they had to wait about 10 minutes for a table. When they got their table, they sat down and ordered their food. As they waited for their food to arrive, Ryan said to Jeff that his neck hurts, and Ryan then cracked his neck, but right when he did this, his neck made a very weird noise, and his head came crashing down on the table. Jeff started freaking out, and so was everyone else at the restaurant. Jeff was trying to wake Ryan up, but he wasn't moving. One of the waitresses then called the police. When the police got there, they determined that Ryan broke his own neck, trying to crack it, and he was dead.
This is why you should always watch videos to the end. In 2003, a woman came home to her apartment to see that her door was unlocked. She went inside, nothing was missing, so she assumed she must have left it open. When it happened a few more times, but still nothing was missing in her apartment, she went out and got a camera, set it up in her apartment aimed at the front door. The next day, her door was unlocked, so she reviewed the footage. She watches in horror as late in the night, her front door opens and in walks this tall, creepy man who looks around and then walks towards her bedroom off camera. She immediately sprints out of her apartment and calls the police, who show up and tell her to go back in her apartment and just try to stay calm, and that they would put an officer right outside her door so she's safe. As she's sitting on the bed, totally traumatized, she realizes something. She only saw him enter her apartment on that video. She doesn't know if he actually left. As she's sitting there, she feels breathing on her ankles. She runs out, the cop comes in, and he finds the tall, creepy man under the bed holding a knife and a camera.
This is why you should never eat peanut butter again. Okay, we all know how good peanut butter is, but after watching this video, I guarantee you never eat it again. According to the FDA, peanut butter can have 30 or more insect fragments in it. So that means every time that you eat peanut butter, you are eating parts of an insect. And if you think that's gross, just wait. Also, in every jar of peanut butter, not only is there 30 insect fragments, there's also 5 or more rodent hairs. This is extremely gross, and the fact that I just learned about this today is even crazier. I'll never eat peanut butter again.
This is why you should always be scared of clowns. In 2004, a babysitter had just sat down to watch TV before the parents got back when she noticed something. In the corner of the room was a large clown statue that, no matter how she positioned herself, seemed like it was staring right at her. As she's looking at it, the father calls to check in on the kids. She tells him everything is fine, and right before they're about to hang up, she says, "Why do you have a huge clown statue in your TV room?" There was silence on the phone, and then the father just says, "We don't own a clown statue." She immediately drops the phone, runs upstairs, gets the kids, runs outside, calls the cops. Cops go in and come out with this guy. As the police are taking the clown away, one of the officers comes over to the girl and with a very grim look on his face just says, "We found him underneath one of the kids' beds. He was holding a sharpened screwdriver."
This is why you should always check under your bed. There was a young boy named Josh who was hanging out with his friends. It was getting late and Josh had to go home. He then left his friend's house and started to walk home. When he got to his house, his mom and dad were both asleep, and he just went straight to his room. Josh then laid on his bed and played on his phone. Suddenly, Josh heard a faint noise. He ignored it and assumed it was his phone, but a couple minutes later, he heard it again and it sounded like it was coming from underneath his bed. Josh then got down on his hands and knees and looked under. He then froze in horror as he saw a man with a knife staring right back at him. The next morning when his parents got up, they went straight to Josh's room to check on him. And when they opened the door, they saw a terrible sight. Josh laid on the ground dead in a pool of blood with a bloody knife right next to his body.
This is why you should always sprint up your stairs at night. In 2018, a boy was up late gaming in his basement when he decided to go to bed. The basement's only light was controlled by a pull chain at the foot of the stairs, which meant after he pulled it, he'd be downstairs in darkness, so he would sprint up the stairs. Because everybody knows if you're not fast enough, this guy'll get you. So he did just that, and he made it upstairs safely when he realized he had forgotten his phone in the basement. So he took a deep breath and headed right back down.
This is why you should never go to Burger King. There was a man named Chris who went to Burger King one night. He then ordered a Whopper, fries, and a drink. Everything was fine until he took a bite of his Whopper and saw a human eye looking back at him. Chris then freaked out and called the police. After he told the police what happened, they immediately went to the Burger King that Chris went to. They then questioned the owner on why a human eye was in a burger. The owner then confessed, killing 13 people and grinding up their bodies and using it for the meats. The owner was then arrested and the Burger King was shut down.
This is why you should always be afraid of Australia. In 2014, an 8-year-old and her family went on an extended vacation to, you guessed it, Australia. After a couple of days, she started having this horrible recurring nightmare where an alien would appear in her room and try to grab her with its tentacle. After a week of this, she is terrified to go to sleep, but her parents keep telling her that it's just her overactive imagination. One night, she swears she feels that thing grab her leg and she leaps from the bed screaming. Her family runs into the room and they see her hysterical in the corner, and then they look at the bed and they all gasp. It wasn't an alien. It was a 7-foot-long adult carpet python that had been sneaking in through the ceiling tile and into her bed to stay warm every night.
This is why you should never go on an escalator. There was a man named Tyler who was at the mall one day. He was shopping for clothes for a couple hours and then got some food at the food court. When he finished his food, he picked up his bags of clothes and began to walk to the escalator to get to the first floor. But as Tyler stepped onto the escalator, his foot got caught in it. He tried to get it out, but he couldn't. The escalator then started to eat Tyler's body. Tyler was screaming in excruciating pain as he was slowly sucked into the escalator. People watched in horror as blood was squirting everywhere and Tyler's body disappeared. Nobody knew what to do except to watch the terrible sight. The mall then closed down for a couple of months because nobody wanted to go to a place where such a terrible accident happened.
This is why you should always trust your gut. In the 1970s, a young couple decided to go for a late-night hike in the woods. A couple minutes into their walk, and the man remembers thinking something's not right. He tells his girlfriend, but they just decide to ignore it and keep going, until he steps on something that felt really soft, like it was alive. Before he has a chance to see what he stepped on, they hear all this rustling in the bushes next to them, and they bolt. Years later, that couple turns on the TV, and a death row inmate who's about to be executed is being interviewed. And they ask him, was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed? He responded, yes, one time. I was in the woods, and a couple walked through, and the man actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. I was hiding in the bushes just a few feet away. They didn't see me. That couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy.